You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of January 24th, 2025. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where life is like a box of chocolates, because if you laminate it and you sharpen it up, you can really do some damage with it. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
What?
I'm in a bit of a mood, Blue Gal.
He's in a bit of a mood.
State, if you will.
Terribly worried about John Bolton. You know how it is.
I know. It's just very sad about John Bolton.
Look, first of all, let's say thank you to Bob Seska and the Bradcast.
Yeah.
And we might as well say thank you and hello to Blue Gal's Knitting Podcast on YouTube.
You were on there, weren't you?
I was on there yesterday as a very special guest of my own podcast, talking about knitting socks.
It was a very busy Wednesday.
It's a very busy Wednesday. We had 3 podcasts to do, and Driftglass went away, and he has to drive. It's a whole thing.
It's a
He'll
thing.
explain in a minute, but he has to go elsewhere to record for the Bradcast, and I did my knitting podcast here at home. And by the way, it is second sock week, everybody. So if you're a sock knitter like I am, this is the week to knit a second sock. And we also want to thank everybody for all the positive feedback about restarting Science Fiction University. Those episodes are a lot of work for Driftglass particularly. He does all the research on them. And then he gets inspiration and at 9:30 at night says, let's watch Star Trek The Next Generation.
Honey, we need to watch this episode right now.
It's for work.
It's for work.
It's for work. And we did. And that was knitting the first sock at that point.
Yeah.
So sure, let's watch it. And so it is a lot of work, but it's also a pleasure to do. And I think it makes Driftglass feel a little less like kicking a puppy through a box fan when we do one. Which is sometimes how it feels to wade into the politics and culture of our time.
Yes, it does.
But I will say this. We do not kick puppies in any way.
No.
And the artwork for our YouTube today is a quote from Audre Lorde. Sometimes we are blessed with being able to choose the time and the arena and the manner of our revolution. But more usually, we must do battle where we are standing.
Yeah, indeed. Or sitting.
Or sitting.
In my case, in the parking lot of a local church, because my cellular phone doesn't get but one little bar at our place of residence here in the cornfield. And to be on with the mighty Brad and Digby and Desi, it requires a better signal than that. So I drive over to a church near our house that has a big old parking lot, and I park there, and I get 4 bars, which is great. But it was a little weird sitting in a church parking lot with the sun going down, running the engine because it was goddamn cold yesterday. But, you do what you can. The sacrifices I make for you people.
To talk to Digby and Brad and Desi about politics.
And really, it was a minor.
And then you hung up and they said, oops.
Yeah, oops. We think we didn't record any of this. We think there was a mistake. And
Story
we thought,
of our lives.
What?
Yeah.
This isn't the Hal Sparks show. Come on. This is us.
Well,
what are you doing?
It has been the Hal Sparks show in from time to time as well.
From time to time. We all have audio problems. This is the thing about podcasting. Everybody has audio problems. Everybody has a little bit of like, the wrong cable. I'm in the wrong place. I don't get a signal. This is all very DIY. So,
and you and Bob Seska couldn't hear me yesterday.
No.
At all.
Which was, well,
and then I held up the USB port to my microphone to the camera to show both of you. And I was trying to tell you that I was going to plug it back in, but you both thought, she doesn't have her microphone plugged in at all.
Yes.
It was just, I had unplugged it and I was plugging it back in. And that worked. For some reason, rebooting often works, whatever equipment you're working with.
I really thought Sesko was trying to do like a Joe Rogan thing where it's just the dudes talking. And the
hey,
women
that'd
have
be
to
all right.
Women should be silent.
I'll hang up and you guys can talk Star Trek for 2 hours. That's fine.
When in church or on the Rogan show, women shall be silent. That's the way it goes.
No, women shall be busy with the revolution while you guys are talking about abs.
And like, you're tipping your hand as to the theme of our podcast today, darling. But before we got to any of that, before the genius moment struck, we had a pretty animated. And I'm a writer, so I was trying to figure out the right word. Was it heated, animated, lively, robust, back and forth / disagreement about Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Jeff Bezos, and Ayn Rand?
Yeah, I was pushing back pretty hard today. I usually don't do that with Driftglass, but today I did.
And it almost ended our marriage. I mean,
no, it didn't.
No, it didn't. No, don't worry. Mom and Dad are fine. We're fine. We have actual political disagreements about important things, at least between us, from time to time. Mm-hmm. But they're both we're both arguing from a place of good faith in each other's opinions.
And I'm sure 1,000% that DB's on my side. So,
that's right.
I'm good.
Yeah. I'll ask Digby the next time I'm freezing in a parking lot talking to an empty air about a podcast that might or might not be recorded.
Ask her about Ayn Rand. You go right ahead.
Oh, I will. Believe me, I will. But we're okay. But we might actually bring the subject up later on because it is kind of an interesting subject. The general heading is, where did this hatred of the left come from, and what is the Bible of Elon Musk? What is the ethos out of which they are operating? Yeah, and I have opinions on the matter, and we can discuss that later.
I have opinions on the matter,
yeah.
And we could just fight it out. I think that'd probably be a pretty good podcast.
I think it would be too.
But
well, and who wins those? It's the sound editor who wins those.
That's right. I get to cut out everything you say.
Just was that Driftglass? That's all I am really is white noise.
And those of you that have been listening to us for 15 years, will know the story of. Let me read to you from Ayn Rand's unpublished notebooks.
Yes.
So if you know that story. This was sort of that story in reverse. It was I wasn't reading Ayn Rand to him, but it was sort of about Ayn Rand and these tech bro oligarchs.
Right. And what they worship and why.
Yeah.
But today we do want to clear the decks for a better feature than talking about fucking Ayn Rand. Bible Bitch is up next.
Bible Bitch, yeah. And Bible Bitch, I quoted the Bible to Bob Seska yesterday. I think I blew his mind. But I don't really want to quote the Bible so much as just talk about the old adage of speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
And it's something we say a lot, and it's something that is sort of on the left particularly just kind of rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other among ourselves. But
let me just say, sparkle bombing Newt Gingrich is not speaking truth to power.
Yeah. So it is something we say a lot. But look, this week, 3 women did it to great effect. And we're going to celebrate that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's doing that battle, the battle where they are standing, just doing their jobs, that made it a manner of our revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And who knew speaking truth to a con man could rile him? It's kind of funny because we've been sort of ruminating over the death of Philip Seymour Hoffman. And as a result, watching him on YouTube, we've seen this clip from The Master where he's trying to con a bunch of people in front of an audience. And this guy just starts questioning him and telling him, saying the truth about what he's saying. And he finally just says, "You pig fuck," and is destroyed. His reputation among this audience is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so truth spoken to a liar in front of an audience can be devastating. It really can.
Yep.
So we're going to start with Jasmine Crockett, who in a congressional hearing questioned David Beer, who is director of the immigration studies at the Cato Institute. Representative Crockett's context was the U.S. Senate passing the Laken-Riley Act, which is unconstitutional. Regardless of what the Supreme Court says about it, we'll wait and see. I'm sure there's going to be lawsuits. But it denies due process to immigrants, period. That's what it does.
And so I want to ask you, my first question, is this rhetoric or reality? Immigrants commit more crimes than U.S. citizens.
On a per capita basis?
Rhetoric or reality?
Oh, it is rhetoric.
Okay, thank you so much. The next one, immigrants are just living off the federal government and contribute nothing.
That would be rhetoric.
Okay, thank you so much. My final rhetoric or reality question is, immigrants only enter at the southern border.
Rhetoric.
Okay, right, because they enter all kinds of ways. I just wanted to make sure that I put that out there.
I love her. She's just down to earth, gets to the point, has illustrations, and says her truth. It's very good. Next up is Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who lit the House chamber on fire. And you will hear in this clip, Jamie Raskin seamlessly supports her through this. And she's really the leader of the opposition these days. I know some people have problems with different things. And I have said before, I don't want her weighed down by leadership positions within the House of Representatives. This is where she belongs.
Yeah.
She belongs on Instagram and she belongs on the floor of the House being this passionate and this truthful. Mm-hmm. And if she has an administrative job where she has to fill seats and move people around and do HR, that's a waste of her talent. But yeah, I think she's the leader of the opposition these days. And I love her for it. I know you do too, Driftglass. Mm-hmm. Now, listen carefully in this clip for the moment where she will remember what will happen. She tells you that that her opponents are going to deny ever knowing the consequences of their vote. And she says, when the consequences of their vote come, remember this moment. She's remembering for them. Remember this moment. They know. They absolutely know what the consequences of this vote are. And she remembers what will happen when private prisons are built for wrongfully detained immigrants. Private prisons, by the way, who some on the other side are profiting from.
I thank the ranking member. Mr. Speaker, I want the American people to know with eyes wide open what is inside this bill. Because we stand here just 2 days after President Trump gave unconditional pardons to violent criminals who attacked our nation's capital on January 6th. And these are the people who want you to believe, who want us to believe that they're trying to, quote unquote, keep criminals off the streets. When they are opening the floodgates. I want the American people to know what is in this bill. Because in the guise and in the wake of tragedy, we are seeing a fundamental erosion of our civil rights. In this bill, if a person is so much as accused of a crime, if someone wants to point a finger and accuse someone of shoplifting, they will be rounded up and put into a private detention camp and sent out for deportation without a day in court. Without a moment to assert their right and without a moment to assert the privilege of innocent until proven guilty. Without being found guilty of a crime, they will be rounded up. That is what is inside this bill, a fundamental suspension of a core American value. And that is why I rise to oppose it. If you're a dreamer, all someone has to do is point a finger and you will be rounded up. And we have seen moments like these happen before. In the Patriot Act, in the wake of the travesty of 9/11, a fundamental suspension of American civil liberties. That is what we are seeing here today. Mr. Speaker, you may wonder why so many of our friends across the aisle who care so deeply about the rule of law happen to be so desperate to pass this bill. After they are unleashing people who attacked police officers here on this Capitol into roaming our streets, who are publicly saying now they want to get a gun. Suddenly, these folks care about public safety? I don't think so. Look no further than the price tag of this bill, $83 billion. They know that it can't be paid for. They know that the capacity is not there. And you know what will be there? Private prison companies are going to get flooded with money. Who give this money, no doubt. I want folks at home to look. Look at what members of Congress are invested in private prison companies who receive this kind of money, and look at the votes on this bill. It is atrocious that people are lining their pockets with private prison profits in the name of a horrific tragedy and the victim of a crime. It is shameful. It is absolutely shameful. And Mr. Speaker, I'll conclude with this. In a few months, there are members of Congress who voted for this bill who are going to pretend they didn't know about all the bad things that are going to happen because of it. So when a private prison camp opens in your town, when a dreamer...
Time has expired.
I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
So when a private prison camp opens in your town and they say, we didn't know this was going to happen, know that they did, and they voted for it. When a dreamer is disappeared from your classroom, when the President of the United States destroys what is left of the Constitution, as he's announced in this attack on birthright citizenship, they will all say, we didn't know this was coming. And I want the American people to know that they did. This vote represents it. And with that, I yield back. Thank you very much.
And finally, of course, you know her, you love her. She's America's bishop. As of this week, she's America's bishop, okay? Bishop Mariann Edgar Budde, Bishop of Washington and Environs. She's a 65-year-old white lady born in New Jersey, and she formerly was a minister in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So she probably knows Tim Walz.
I was thinking, does she know about
and crockpots? You know,
the 13% discount from Home Depot? Is she familiar with those protocols?
You know, that discount. And here she is. You've probably heard it, but it's worth hearing again. Preaching kindness and mercy to Donald Trump at church.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation. But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people in this nation and the world. Amen.
This is what pastors are supposed to do. This is their goddamn job.
Yep.
Their job is to interpret Christian scripture to their flock and tell the flock what they are supposed to have learned from the lessons of the Bible. Now, you know, whatever faith you're in, or if you're an atheist, fine with us. We love having you. But if you are any faith at all, there's someone in your church or your mosque or wherever you worship standing up in front of the group, leading them in a conversation or a pastoral address, teaching them lessons. It is especially important to do this job when it makes your flock uncomfortable, when they don't want to hear what you have to say, because that's the only time you're going to make progress on improving the state of their soul. When they're hiding something, when they're guilty about something. If you ever want to read a story about this, read The Minister's Black Veil.
Yeah.
An oldie but a goodie. But it is the job of a pastor to tell the truth to the flock and interpret the Bible to the flock. And that is exactly what Bishop Budde did. And the radical nonsense she was preaching was mercy, compassion, kindness, especially to someone in power. And the paradigm, if you're a Christian, the paradigm is very familiar, because this is always what gets the upstart in trouble. Starting with the beginning of the church, when you have a carpenter from Nazareth telling the emperor that there's a higher power than you, and you are charged with being merciful and decent and kind and honorable. And that shit they don't want to hear. This is what got Martin Luther King in trouble. It got him in trouble, not for preaching those things, but for quoting America's own words back to America. You say these things. You make these promises. These are the words you live by. You talk about freedom and equality for everyone.
You talk about we the people. You talk about we the people. Yeah.
And you preach it all over the world. Your foreign policy is all about American democracy and how fair and free it is. And all we are asking is that you live up to your own words. And Donald Trump, in his inaugural speech, talked about how God had anointed him, chosen him, laid his hand on his shoulder.
Brought him to this point, and God protected him, and blah, blah, blah.
And all she did was say, if that's true, and you're talking about my Christian God, which is sort of my subject matter expert area of expertise, here's what that God charges you to do, especially as a person who is now powerful: to be kind, to be merciful, not to scare the crap out of people, not to be a tyrant. That is what the Bible demands of its leaders, asks you to do. That's all she did. And it drove him up the fucking wall.
Oh, I thought Trump took it calmly like a man, right? Isn't that what he did?
No, he took it like a whiny little bitch that he is. He's a
whiny little bitch.
Thin-skinned coward that he is. This is how he reacted. He ran to social media to call Bishop Budde, quote, nasty in tone and not compelling or smart, because smart's a big thing with him. Anybody who disagrees with him is not smart, or they're nasty. And he also wrote, the so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday was, say it with me now, kids, a radical left hardline Trump hater. No, that's us, dude. That's us.
I am radical left hardline Trump hater. I don't think I'm that radical.
Oh, by the way,
complaints on YouTube that we're not radical or professional left.
I know. We get those.
We're just run-of-the-mill Democrats.
There is no left anymore. Everyone is the radical left. Everyone who says a mean thing about the orange tyrant is a radical left Trump hater and not smart and nasty. Yeah, fuck off. Fuck off, you asshole.
Yeah, so here comes the horde of snowflakes.
Right.
I mean, it's just so predictable. Sean Hannity called her a so-called bishop and said she made the service about her very own deranged political beliefs with a disgraceful prayer full of fear-mongering and division.
Yeah,
She's so divisive, Driftglass, calling for mercy.
And they have this box full of inflammatory adjectives that they all pull the same dumb shit on, and it has to keep escalating. It's no longer sufficient to call us socialists. Now they have to call us communists. They have to call us baby-murdering, America-hating, Trump-hating, stupid communists, because the mob demands ever more hysterical, over-the-top reaction to any criticism of Orange Julius Caesar. Trump's press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, responded to Budde's comment by telling Fox News everybody there was shocked and mortified by the disturbing comments from this bishop who chose to weaponize the pulpit. That's what the pulpit's for, honey.
Yeah.
She spewed lies. Well, okay. I guess asking the president to behave compassionately is a lie, because she knows he's never going to do that.
Right. Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire was a classic, called Budde a fake bishop, and in good Christian form said of her, "It is a truth long established that a liberal woman over 50 with a lesbian haircut is sure to support the most evil ideas and policies that mankind has ever conceived." Don't sugarcoat it, you asshole.
Yeah. Meanwhile, back over on Fox, Greg Gutfeld called Bishop Budde Satan. Because, eventually you got to go there, Blue Guy. You got to call her Satan after she asked Donald Trump to please show compassion.
Yeah, that's what Satan would do. What would Satan do?
Yeah, well, if you great, this is how Satan would react if you give him a holy water enema. Is this huge freak out over this person, this very nice lady telling the leader of the country,
65-year-old white lady from born in New Jersey and having served in Minnesota, is just Satan.
I guarantee you, if you go back through the inaugural addresses and addresses to Congress, joint sessions of Congress by almost every president in modern times, you will find them bragging on America's kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
Taking the words that she spoke and using them as affirmations of what America's all about. It is only when you're a lying, traitorous, con man scumbag that someone asking you to be kind is to be interpreted as, oh, she's Satan and she's nasty and stupid and she's not a real bishop anyway. What a child. What a fucking child. And he represents MAGA. He represents the dirty, dark soul of 80 million idiots in this country, bigots and imbeciles all, who elected this son of a bitch. But anyway, let's move on to Charlie.
Whose lifestyle depends on immigrants.
Oh, yeah.
And whose
100%.
families arrived here, we've said this before, during a time of open borders.
Well, his wife would be deported as an illegal immigrant. She cheated on her visa, and she stole an American job, and she's no. There's a whole bunch of people in his inner circle who would be disqualified and hustled out of this country if the rules ever apply to them. Of course, the rules never apply to them because they're Republicans. And finally, from Mr. Charlie Pierce, brother Charlie Pierce of Esquire, quote, beside himself, which is one too many, Representative Mike Collins immediately leaped into action. Well, actually, he leaped onto Twitter and demanded that the good bishop be deported, apparently to New Jersey, whence she came. This is from The Hill, quote, the person giving this sermon should be added to the deportation list, Collins wrote in a post on the social platform X alongside a copy of Budde's comments. I think the reign of morons is going off to a swinging start, don't you? The president also chimed in, telling the members of the cult that Bishop Budde was not only not compelling or smart, but also that the service was very boring and uninspiring. I guess it would be more inspiring if Bishop Budde had held a Bible upside down.
Yeah, and said, it's a Bible.
Like Trump did.
Your Bible, it's a Bible.
Like Trump did when he had his people gas a bunch of people in the park so he could walk across the street and pose with a Bible that he's never read in his goddamn life, that he refused to touch during his inauguration, and which he held upside down. So, but, take a moment and consider how much of a loser and an idiot you have to be to look at all of that in its totality and go, yeah, that's my guy. That's who I want. That's who I'm voting for.
And let's talk about another incredibly unpopular thing Donald Trump did this week. The brown shirts are back, Drift Glass.
Yes, they are.
From the Associated Press, quote, former Proud Boys leader and Oath Keepers founder released after Trump offers Jan 6 clemency. The former leader of the Proud Boys and the founder of the Oath Keepers have been released from prison. I can't believe there wasn't one goddamn person in that White House to tell him no. Not these two. After their lengthy sentences for seditious conspiracy in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol were wiped away by a sweeping order, he said, fuck it, release them all. That's what he said. He didn't want to go over the list.
Because he's very lazy. He's got low energy and he's lazy. And he
there
can't
wasn't
really
one
read.
person in that circle, not one advisor to say, not these two. They're dangerous to America.
And that's what he wants.
They could be dangerous to you if you breathe wrong on them.
Mr. Law and Order.
Yeah, Mr. Law and Order. Enrique Tarrio and Stuart Rhodes were two of the highest profile Jan 6 defendants, and received some of the harshest punishments because the evidence was there in court. That's why. Mm-hmm. In what became the largest investigation in Justice Department history, Rhodes of Granbury, Texas, was serving an 18-year prison sentence, and Terrio of Miami was serving a 22-year sentence after they were convicted of orchestrating plots to stop the peaceful transfer of power after Trump, a Republican, lost the 2020 election to Democrat Joe Biden. Their attorneys confirmed to the Associated Press on Tuesday that they had been released hours after Trump pardoned, commuted the sentences of, or ordered the dismissal of cases against all 1,500 plus people who were charged with federal crimes in the riot. Trump's action paved the way for the release of extremist group leaders convicted in major conspiracy cases, as well as people who violently attacked law enforcement officers defending the Capitol, unquote. No back the blue. This is just pure fascism. He's releasing his brown shirts. He wants his private army to be out there to threaten people who don't like him. That's it.
No, it's now, fuck the
already,
cops. You think, I mean, this is fuck the police. This is him telling the cops.
This is fuck the police.
Fuck you. I got your endorsement already. I got your Fraternal Order of Police endorsement. Guess what? Fuck you. I'm releasing people who tried to murder cops. So, suck on it.
Yep, because they are my supporters. For now. I mean, this is the thing. He trusts Enrique Terrio and Stuart Rhodes to be on his side for 4 years.
No, he trusts his cordon of Secret Service agents.
Yeah. I bet they're real happy about it.
Yeah.
Already one of those released. I mean, this was this week. And already one of those released has been arrested on federal gun charges. Mm-hmm. Bringing weapons into D.C. Mm-hmm. Every single crime committed by any of these 1,500 plus people, every single crime they commit is on Trump. Every single one. It's like the COVID deaths. Every single one. Because he lied about it.
He did it. He did it to us. He did it to cover his ass. He lied because that's all this son of a bitch ever does. And it's all on him. Now, I know that MAGA folks don't fucking care because they're lost to reason and they're basically meatbags. But there are a few of them who are musing that maybe that some mistake has been made. So this is
MAGA's starting to crack is what's happening.
Well, this is from your this is stuff that's into your fucked around and found out files. A few more stories of MAGA buyer's remorse. Because early a couple of days ago, I woke my wife and said, honey, I'm going to read to you now from NPR.
Really?
Yeah. And then she threw something at me. And then I said, okay, I'll wait till you've had a cup of coffee and listen to your Bible
lesson.
Let
me drink a couple sips of coffee before you read to me from NPR. Yeah.
No, because we were watching or listening to something similar, and I think it was Mr. Olbermann probably.
Yeah, I think it probably was.
Oh, this fits in really well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is from NPR just yesterday, actually. Quote, some Trump voters expressed reservations about his sweeping January 6th pardons. Oh, no, reservations. David Brown, voter in South Carolina, has mostly voted for Democrats in the last decade. I don't believe that for a fucking minute. But he changed things up last year. He said he voted for President Trump in the presidential election because immigration was one of his key issues. And he felt, listen carefully now, he didn't know enough about the Democratic nominee, former Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yeah, he only knew two things about her race and her gender. That's it.
That's all he knew about her. Just one day into the presidency he voted for, though, Brown doesn't approve of some of Trump's early decisions. Oh, brother, buckle up. Buckle up. He disapproves most of Trump's decision to pardon roughly 1,500 people who participated in the riot at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Quote, it was an insurrection because, to me, he incited those people, but he let them go, Brown said on Tuesday. I don't agree with it. Brown, who is now retired and very, very stupid, had a slew of jobs throughout his life, which is what makes America great. Even idiots can get work here. One of those jobs is working as a police officer in Washington, D.C. Oh, good God. Yeah. Many of the individuals Trump pardoned and were convicted of violence against police. Brown said letting them free amounts to an abuse of power and a miscarriage of justice. I believe if the rioters were instructed to do something and they did not follow the officers or the police enforcement rules and follow what they said, they should be serving their time, he said. I think it's pretty much a slap in the face of law enforcement. Everyone else had to serve time. They should also, unquote. All right, let's all sit with that for a minute and try to get ourselves into the tiny, mushy mind of Mr. Brown. What do we know about Mr. Brown of South Carolina? What does this article tell us? As detectives, let's figure out how we can profile Mr. Brown. First, he's lying about his voting record. I don't have any proof of this, but come on. He has
not been voting Democrat his whole life. No, he has not.
No, fuck you. You haven't. Second, that he not only believes the January 6th was an insurrection, which 100% it was, but he also believed Donald Trump incited it, that he's responsible for it. Also,
he probably watched it on TV and came to that conclusion like everyone else with a brain did.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard not to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Especially since that's exactly what all the evidence said, all the piles and mountains of evidence. Also, for a couple of years, Trump made it very, very clear that he intended to pardon these thugs and traitors. Okay? Now we have the facts. But when Trump, the traitor and insurrectionist leader that Mr. Brown had voted for, kept his campaign promise to release the January 6th terrorists, suddenly Mr. Brown has the brass to pretend to be shocked and disappointed. Oh my God, it's a slap in the face. It feels like a miscarriage of justice. So my question for all those smart consultants out there who insist that Democrats need to go hard after low information morons like Mr. Brown, who we are told are somehow both completely clueless about everything and pay no attention to anything and aren't interested in politics at all, but somehow also are highly attuned to every little thing Democrats do. Don't understand how it can be both things, but I'm told all the time that both those things are true. How should we go about persuading Mr. Brown and all the other Mr. Browns out there?
Here are your names. Mr. Brown, Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink.
Why am I Mr. Pink?
Oh, and I did a little tricky thing. Can you guess the term that I omitted from Mr. Brown's NPR profile? It was Dan Brown, an independent voter in South Carolina.
I'm an independent.
Yeah, he's an independent, and goddamn proud of it, I'm sure.
All right, now back to NPR for the next flavor of voter disappointment. Quote, according to the survey, 89% of Democrats, 62% of independents, and 30% of Republicans disapproved of the pardons. Dan Morrow is one of the voters who told pollsters he supported the pardons. Morrow of Iowa voted for Trump in the last 3 elections and told NPR in a follow-up conversation on Tuesday that he knows people who attended the rallies and peaceful gatherings in Washington on the day of the insurrection. He said he doesn't think everyone who was at the Capitol should stay locked up. However, Morrow said he has a tougher time reconciling pardons for rioters who were violent with the police. It's tough to reconcile that, he said. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are upset about the Jan 6 people. I can understand it, but if they didn't physically accost a police officer, I have no problem with them.
Yeah, if they only stormed in and shit in Nancy Pelosi's office and called for Mike Pence to be hung, that's fine. That's just good, clean fun, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sorry Driftglass tricked you again by printing this interview out and not mentioning that Dan Morrow identifies himself as an independent.
Another independent. He's another independent. So many independents out there, Blue Gal. So many.
But he voted for Trump 3 times in a row.
But he's an independent.
I'm an independent. Independent constitutional conservative. I never liked the tweeting.
He never liked the tweeting. Back to Blue.
Finally, we arrive at Mary Ann Peruzzi, a, quote, Republican voter in Massachusetts. And I know Republican voters in Massachusetts. They're like Orange County voters in Republican voters in California.
Highly concentrated.
Highly concentrated. Mm-hmm. She said she thinks Democrats are to blame for what happened at the Capitol, citing conspiracy theories she read on social media. It was all a farce, she said. I'm really happy that they are pardoning them. When asked about the violence against law enforcement that day, Peruzzi denied any Trump supporters were responsible, despite public information linking many of the assailants to right-wing groups. The Republican Party that was for Trump would not do that, she said. They love this country, unquote.
Yeah. So, roughly speaking, when it comes to electoral stuff, going after those voters who are a little mushy in the middle, the voters we didn't get last time, those are the three tiers of Trump voters we are dealing with. There's the moron who, as Blue Gal explained it to me earlier, is racist, sexist, and has a 4th grade reading level, so also an idiot, who damn well knew the January 6th was a violent insurrection, damn well knew that Trump incited it, voted for him anyway, and was shocked and upset when Trump did exactly what he said he was going to do.
Right.
That's tier 1. Tier 2 is we have the voter who rationalized that most people there were harmless, but was still kind of bothered that Trump would pardon people who tried to, murder cops. That really made him think twice. It's not going to make him stop voting for these assholes, but it really irritated him because now liberals might make fun of us for being hypocrites and liars, and we can't have that. And then we have the MAGA sock puppet who thinks it's all just a deep state Democratic hoax. Yep. And you should ignore everything because Democrats did the whole thing, and I know it because I did my own research. And that's the person who is completely lost to reason, who's basically cattle at this point. And you can just forget about her because you'll never reach her because she's dead from the neck up. No,
because she's going to blame Democrats for
everything.
For electing Donald Trump next. That's the thing. The price of eggs will go so high. She'll go, this is putting Trump in was a Democratic plot to hurt me.
Right. Or Democrats are secretly like egg napping, out
egg
there.
Napping
We're jacking
and
the price of eggs.
controlling the bird flu.
That's right. And now, you know what I'm going to do then? I'm going to take an AK-47. I'm going to shoot up a couple of dozen eggs. That's what I'm going to do and show them or whatever.
I'm going to buy 3 dozen eggs and shoot them down with my gun.
With my gun. That'll show somebody something.
Those eggs, especially during Pride Month.
Yeah, I know. Well, what do you do during Easter? You're dyeing them rainbow colors, Blue Gal.
Uh-oh.
Yep.
There you go. All right.
Don't exaggerate. Now I'm getting all Vincent Price from Batman, the egghead.
All right. Changing gears now, Driftglass. You wanted to talk about all the educational opportunities that the 2024 election has afforded us.
Yeah. And I mean that little tongue in cheek, but also quite seriously. Because 2024, if we pay attention to what we tried and what didn't work, does have lessons to teach us. This is about that quote from Mark Twain about there's nothing to be learned from the second kick of a mule. Once you've been mule kicked once, you're not going to learn anything ever again from the second kick. So this is from Roxanne Gay in the New York Times. Can you guess when she wrote it? Quote, "This is not an aberration. This is indeed our country and who the proverbial we are. The way this election has played out shouldn't be a surprise if you've been paying attention or if you understand racism and how systemic it really is," unquote. Now, this is the part that might surprise you a little bit. She wrote that the day after the 2020 election, not the 2024 election. And she was right. 74 million people voted for Trump in 2020. That's 11 million more than had voted for him in 2016 after 4 years of nonstop daily proof of what a vindictive, incompetent, lying thug he really was. And do you remember what these same people said and did, how they reacted after Biden won? After pretty well confirmed, he's inaugurated, he's in the White House, etc. The entire GOP began immediately bitching and carping about how dare Democrats ignore the wishes and preferences of 74 million Americans.
Right.
I mean, how dare we? Who do we think we are? We're Americans, and we voted.
Yeah.
And there's
how
millions
dare
of
you
us.
pass the Inflation Reduction Act?
Yeah. We don't approve of that, and you should listen to us.
Yeah.
Now, 2024 taught us, sadly, that Joe Biden's sunny confidence in the basic goodness and civic virtue of the average voter was fatally delusional because there are no average voters. This is an artifact of lazy language in journalism. The idea that Americans want this and voters want that and Congress does a thing is lazy language from journalists. What you mean to say is Republican voters, MAGA voters, Republicans in Congress, Republicans in the Senate, Republicans doing this, not
And I don't
Americans.
care how many goddamn times they call themselves independent.
No, they're Republicans.
Did they vote for Al Gore? No, they did not.
No, they did not. And this is, I think I forget whether I asked Mr. Seska this or not, I probably did. It was just rhetorical. For people who write like this, as if America's one big block of things and we all decide everything together, was America pro-union or anti-union in 1860? Because half of Americans were very much pro-union and half of Americans seceded. Yeah. So you can't say Americans were all this or Americans were all that. Were Americans
and women and black people had no voice at all.
Right.
So, this is the thing, right?
Were Americans, quote unquote, pro-civil rights in 1964 or anti-civil rights in 1964? Mm-hmm. Well, a whole bunch of them were against it. And they were very, very sad. They've been fighting against it ever since. So the idea that you lump all Americans together and say we this and we that is absurd. It's just lazy journalism.
Yeah.
Now, 2024 also taught us all the things that don't work, that won't work. We can stop trying them now because they don't work. The Lincoln Project scam didn't work. Giving tens of millions of dollars to a bunch of former Republicans to write ads that tickle liberal libidos and make our ganglia twitch didn't work.
Yep.
Surprise, surprise. The Bulwark's thesis that throwing liberals under the bus like us and hugging up with Liz Cheney, that didn't work, did it? Didn't work.
Nope.
Joy didn't work. Appealing to the independent voters' better angels didn't work. Asking them to help defend democracy didn't work. Asking them to stand up for the basic rights of women didn't work.
Nope.
To quote Thomas Edison, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work.
Yeah.
And something I talked about on the Seska show was something called survivor bias. And survivor bias, I think, arises from World War II, where 50 bombers go over to take out sites in Europe and 20 come back. And 50 go over and 30 come back. And 70 go over and 60 come back. And some enterprising person, because there's always a massive loss when that happens, went about the business of counting bullet holes. Where are the bullet holes? And mapped all the bullet holes over each other and found out on these planes, they all had something in common. They all got hit in lots and lots and lots of places, but there were places on these planes that weren't hit. Big gaps on these planes that never got hit.
The cockpit and the fuselage is pretty much it, right?
Well, the fuel tanks.
And fuel tanks, that's what I meant.
And so they figured out, those are the spots the other planes must have gotten hit who didn't make it back. Those are the plane killers. And so we'll up armor those spots to keep the planes safe. And it did work. And our job for the next couple of years, because the midterms are coming up, is to do the same thing with political tactics and strategy, overlaying them one on top of another to observe what worked and what did not. And we know all the things that don't work. Yeah. And the things that do work, I'm convinced, are the things that worked in 2004 and 2005 and 2006, when you might remember, if you're an OG blogger or you were around then, or you just been listening or reading for the last, 30, 40, 50 years, we lost the 2004 election to an incompetent, dry, drunk, lying scumbag named George W. Bush. I don't care how many times they yuck it up together in photos. George Bush was a catastrophe as a president. A catastrophe. Unmitigated. He would have gone down in history as the worst president in modern history, except for Trump. Because Republicans just keep electing more and more horrible people. But enough people voted for him in 2004 to put him back in the White House, which blew us away. Because how could America do that? Well, there is no America, really. There's just us and there's those guys and a bunch of mushy people in the middle. So what we learned from 2003, 4, and 5 is that we had to endure during those years being called everything but a child of God for standing up and opposing the Iraq war and pointing out that we were being lied to, that we lied into the wrong war, that they were fucking that war up, that they were looting the country, that Dick Cheney's friends were looting the country, using that war as a pretext to make billions of dollars just disappear. And we were called America-hating, terrorist-loving, communist scum over and over again. And we still said, okay, have your opinion. That's great. Everyone's against us. The mainstream media is rolling over for this asshole. They're carrying the water of the Bush administration. They're letting him go and meet the fucking press and barrel roll or log roll Tim Russert, who's fallen for this whole thing. We have no friends in the media, and the entire conservative media apparatus is against us. So what do? We just keep doing what we were doing. Sure and confident that, hopefully anyway, reality would eventually catch up with our critique. And it did. And that's the thing. We kept saying the same thing over and over and over again. This guy's a disaster. The Iraq War is a disaster. He's creating the very problem that they went in there to solve. He's creating the resistance. He's creating the monsters who are killing American troops. That all the things. We're not going to relitigate the entire Iraq War now. But there were so many people at every level of respectable media who took us for granted, who called us crazy, who called us stupid. Mr. David Brooks being chief among them.
Yeah.
And then it turned out we were right. And slowly but surely, people had to change their opinion to conform to what we had told them was going to happen. They didn't want to. They hated us for it. They canceled us for it.
They still hate us for it.
They still hate us for it.
They still hate us for it.
And it was vitally important to the legacy media that liberal voices not get credit for being right.
Yeah.
That everybody just agreed to sort of forget what happened and move on past it. And let's not discuss
look at this. There's
the
a Tea Party now.
Yeah. Oh, looky. There's a new group of people over here. Let's pay attention to them.
Yeah.
But
Driftglass, I think there's one other thing that we need to start learning to do, and you've said this before.
Yeah.
And that is punch back harder.
Yeah. Yep.
And this crap about this bishop needs to be flattened.
Right. Well, and
These attacks on her are just bullshit.
I agree. And you know how I feel about people using big font and exclamation points to say they destroyed someone. But
on the other hand, fourth grade reading level, how are you going to reach them without yellow font in fourth grade?
I agree.
Fourth grade.
And I think what we did learn from the Iraq days is that when we focused our attention, because let's be really honest, the legacy media has deserted us.
Mm-hmm.
They've deserted us. There are still great people doing great work at some of the hollowed out husks of the great newspapers in America, but the corporations that run them have abandoned us completely. They don't give a shit about us. They're sucking up to Trump. It's a business decision, and this is what they're doing. But when we were in the minority and when we were speaking together, more or less with one voice, when you go from Eschaton to Steve Gilliard's news blog to Crooks and Liars to your blog, Blue Gal, to my blog, to Digby's blog, and all the other OG bloggers out there, we were all sending the same message. We were all singing from the same hymnal on the same page because we all have different voices and different emphasis. But we all were focused on the same thing, which was the Bush administration, the failed Bush administration, has lied to you, and it's all going to come crashing down because reality will not be denied. And that's what happened. And if I would have one suggestion to my fellow bloggers and podcasters out there, we need to do that as well. We need to start holding hands with each other and speaking with a single voice and saying, Donald Trump is a racist, looting, lying traitor, and everyone who's on his side is beneath contempt. And reality will have its fucking way with these people. Yeah. And over and over and over again, we need to say that. And I don't mean we shouldn't speak out on specific issues like the bishop, but the overarching message needs to be Donald Trump is a disaster for this country. The people that voted for him are unfit to be citizens of this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing that came out today, too, I went and clipped it for Crooks and Liars, rolling the tape of Donald Trump in March of 2023, talking to Nigel Farage, another con man, and saying, it's going to be so easy to end this war in Ukraine.
Yeah, first day one.
I know Zelensky. I know Putin. I know what they want. We'll be able to make a deal. It'll take 24 hours.
Right.
And everybody is on that page today. I've been very impressed throughout social media. The usual suspects. Our allies have all been saying, and by the way, today he said, when's the war going to end? Ask Russia. To which I said to John Amato, why is Trump president? Ask Russia.
Yeah, exactly. And we shouldn't, and let's not forget our one of our basic thesis, which is you take out the center and the right will fall.
Yeah.
You know, the people in the center are the people who are so lightweight, so unmoored to anything that can be blown this way and that. And those are the people we need to focus on, reminding them, you chose this, and now you're going to pay a dear, dear price, and we're never going to let you forget it. But maybe next election, you won't be so fucking stupid. Yeah. And the other group that needs...
Because we on the left are laughing at you.
Yeah. We know what you did, and you know what you did. And once again, it's going to be, I think I said, Jesus, this was 2006 or 7, that George Bush would eventually become the parachute pants of presidential politics.
Exactly.
That no one will admit to having owned a pair or worn a pair until you show them a picture of them in it. They're like, oh, yeah, I guess I did that. And let's change the subject. And we have to also be very clear that the media, generally speaking, legacy media is now in the enemy camp. And they can't be spared either. So I still have faith.
Morning Joe betrayed this country.
Well, and I knew that liberal bloggers were getting through when David Brooks lost his fucking mind in the New York Times and started screaming about how we were just as bad as Tom DeLay. Gotcha. Now. Gotcha. We're under your skin now.
You're paying attention to us. Yes.
And it wasn't that it wasn't anything we had to say. It was that we united to win something that he wanted us to lose. And we beat him.
How dare we threaten the establishment by primarying a pro-war Democrat?
Right. How dare we? What the hell do we think we are? And when you started hearing us being bashed on the Chris Matthews show and the Joe Scarborough show, suddenly, they're paying attention and they're frightened of us. I think I used this analogy yesterday with Brad, the very end of, or maybe Seska, the very end of Starship Troopers, where Neil Patrick Harris, puts his hand on the bug, on the brain bug, and says, "It's afraid." And they're not afraid of us. They're afraid of reality catching up with their lies. That's what every con man's afraid of, the con folding up and catching them out. And so the more we tell the truth and the more relentless we are about it, the more focused we are about it, the more we're going to scare the shit out of them. And that's the end of my TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed it.
Let's do a news roundup, Drip Class. The Cornfield Resistance persists. John Cooper on Blue Sky observed, if you want further proof that American journalism is dead, the Hollywood Reporter showed more moral clarity in their coverage of Elon Musk's Nazi salute than the Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, Wall Street Journal, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, or NBC. Cowards all.
Yeah.
Because you know what? If you cover it, it's divisive.
That's right.
Nazi salutes are divisive.
They're divisive and very suggestive of other things that may or may not be true. That's an inside joke. So, from Axios 2 days ago, quote, Trump signs executive order aimed at ending birthright citizenship. President Trump has signed an executive order attempting to end birthright citizenship in the United States, a right guaranteed by our very own Constitution and affirmed by the Supreme Court more than 125 years ago, unquote. By the way, in case we weren't clear about this, Project 2025 is White House policy, full stop. They published the plan. Like Mein Kampf, they published the plan.
They published the plan. Donald Trump's brain is mush.
Yeah.
He's signing what he's being given to sign.
Right.
And all those EOs, all those executive orders were written well in advance.
Yeah.
And here we go.
On the other hand,
he was too tired and lazy and whatever to go over the list of people and their crimes and figure out who was really a threat to the personal safety of American citizens and who wasn't. And he literally said, fuck it, release them all. So from MSN News today, quote, federal judge halts Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship. And we want to applaud the people who pushed back on this immediately and were ready to go.
Yeah.
A federal judge on Thursday temporarily blocked President Donald Trump's executive order ending the constitutional guarantee of birthright citizenship, regardless of the parent's immigration status. You know, one of the people who might not have birthright citizenship, Maria Bartiromo.
Oh, no.
Her grandparents, were doing chain migration. We talked about that on another podcast. What about Trump's wife?
What about
all of Trump's wives have been foreigners, I think, except for Tiffany's mom. Yeah. U.S. District Judge John C. Coffenauer ruled in the case brought by the states of Washington, Arizona, Illinois, and Oregon, which argue that the 14th Amendment and Supreme Court case law have cemented birthright citizenship. The case is one of 5 lawsuits being brought by 22 states and a number of immigrants' rights groups across the country. Unquote.
Yeah. And finally, we're doing an abbreviated news roundup because the news is just bad. It's all bad.
Yeah.
And you probably heard enough of it. So we're doing a shorter version of that today. But this is from Philadelphia Inquirer's own Will Bunch. Quote, the story the media tried to ignore on Inauguration Day is that Trump's rapid mental decline was on full display. From rambling, slurred digressions about wall-building materials to paranoid conspiracy and revenge fantasies, unquote. I didn't want to make a point about...
middle of the night Truth Social posts that are just as paranoid as fuck. Unbelievable.
Well, and the idea that he had to give two speeches.
Two speeches.
The first speech
Susie Wiles wanted one for posterity. That's why. Right.
This is the one for the New York Times and the Meet the Press. And
now I can give my rally speech to the brown shirts. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the one that was like, so he's barely awake, mouthing the words, mispronouncing things.
And that's where he invoked God.
Yeah.
You have to.
And this is where he clearly, this is the speech I didn't want to give, but they're making me do it. I'm like, who's making you? You're the fucking president. Who's making you do this?
Susie Wiles is making him. He has staff. He has enough staff to make him give a speech for the New York Times for Peter Baker.
And then came
but he doesn't have a staff to tell him, those you don't pardon seditionists who've been sentenced to 22 and 18 years in prison.
No. Well, then he waddles into the
evidence.
Then he waddles into the overflow room and says, now here's the real speech.
Yeah, right.
And it's the one ripping into everybody, paranoid, vindictive, bitter asshole Trump. That Trump. And that he was fully awake and aware.
Oh yeah.
He was enjoying himself.
That's the one where Elon gave the Nazi salute.
Right. It was a Trump rally. It was disgusting, but he's disgusting and everyone around him is disgusting. But clearly that's the strategy. We're going to do one set of things for the legacy media so they'll leave us the fuck alone. And then we're going to go over here and do what we really want to do, because this is really why we got elected, to avenge ourselves, to make ourselves rich, and to piss on people who don't like us. And that's it.
I love you, Drift Glass.
I love you, Blue.
And I think I do have to tell the story about Suggestive very briefly.
Go right ahead.
When we first in high school got cable TV, and HBO was showing naughty movies late at night, and my mom walked into the living room, and she said, "Oh, I think that's very suggestive." And my little sister said, "Really, Mom? What does it suggest to you?" And so that word suggestive has been a running joke in my family for over 40 years.
Yes.
Each week we post to our Patreon page and website, and actually it's already up. I did it before we recorded today.
Oh, cool. Okay.
An Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners, but this week's Internet Kitty is a dog, and her name is Lily. Oh, she's so beautiful. She is a 4.5-year-old blue merle smooth coat collie, adopted in 2023 from a group who rescued her from a puppy mill in Blue Gal's old stomping ground, Alabama.
Oh.
Lily loves her squeaky toys, belly rubs, hiking in the woods, and protecting her backyard from all the dangerous squirrels and bunnies. That's a full-time job, Lily.
That's a tough job.
Needless to say, she'll only eat freshly poured pet food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Dreck, your dog will run in the house from their backyard heroic feats and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
You can visit Lily at our Patreon page, patreon.com/proleftpod, or our website, proleftpod.com. And let me say, Inauguration Day, I woke up in a rage. I was
You did.
Irritated beyond belief that this was happening. And I opened the email, and someone had become a $5 member on Patreon. And I went, okay.
All right.
I just went, oh, okay.
That's, yeah. We're in this all the way.
And you guys inspire us with your support. You really do. Your letters, your support, your financial support, all of it. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being there for us. And in addition to a donation, you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com. or you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you.
And I suggest you don't literally send us your dog or cat, but send us a picture of your dog or cat. That'd be great.
Send it via email, a picture.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes, you can send those to us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. And that is the email address that goes to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. And be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go! Postal unions fired to joy. Letter on the air, unless you say otherwise.
We have these gourmet coffee guidelines that are not blatantly unconstitutional. In fact, they're greatly welcomed. And if you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for us, buy one for yourself. Sure, treat yourself.
It's the other way around.
The other way around? Okay, strike that. Reverse it. This is not charity. This is our job, and we've been at it for 15 years now. I think we're getting pretty good at it. Occasionally I screw things up, but isn't that part of the charm? If you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month at patreon.com/proleftpod, all one word. Please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. We really do appreciate you doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties know that it's especially hard to chop wood and carry water when it's 16 below outside, but it still needs to get done.
Yep.
Love you, Blue Gal.
I love you too, Driftglass. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.